All right, ladies and gentlemen, Vicente Fox. Remember Vicente Fox? Pretty insignificant in my view these days, former president of Mexico. You remember Mexico? They're going to get the wall built and they're going to pay for it. And I still believe that that's going to happen. I do. You know, I know the media has decided Trump won't do it. They're not going to let him do it. It can't be done. But you know what? The media has been wrong all along, and they're wrong now. I don't want to get into the media right now. But Vicente Fox, he's out there sowing the seeds of fear and division and hatred, in my opinion. And he was doing it yesterday. Watch.
Right now, I think he's an illegitimate president of the United States.
Why is he illegitimate? He just won an election.
He would have to legitimize. He didn't win the general election, so he's got too many people against him, and they have shown out on the streets. But anyway, in Mexico, we can be rude also. As I said, we're strong now. We're going to defend our people wherever they are, in Mexico or outside of Mexico in the United States.
Okay, so I don't know where to start with that, so I'll start at the beginning. He's an illegitimate, let me get this straight, he is an illegitimate president who didn't win the general election. Hey, I got to watch myself. I really, really, really have to watch myself. Hey, Vicente, he won the election. He won the election. Don't tell us about how we choose our president. He won the election. The popular vote doesn't count. If it did, there would have been a different way of campaigning for the popular vote, not for the Electoral College. Trump and Hillary would have had to go to all the states. Trump would have gone to the huge, big states that he never went to. California. He didn't campaign in New York either. So don't tell us he didn't win the general election. He won the presidency. And by the way, why don't you talk about what you do in your country to people who break in illegally through your southern border? If they're not shot, they wind up in prison. Why don't you talk about that? And what did he say? We could be rude. We're strong now. We're going to defend our people wherever they are. What does that mean? Take your criminals back and keep them. Here's more from Vicente.
We're not going to let this guy to offend them anymore, to offend their dignity, and more so to deny the enormous contribution they make to U.S. economy.
Yeah, you're not going to let this guy, a.k.a. the president-elect, you have no respect, do you, sir? None. To offend the dignity and to deny the enormous contribution, the dignity of criminals? Every Mexican or anybody else, but I'll talk in Vicente's people, as he put it, every Mexican who's here illegally is a criminal by definition. Illegal, criminal, broke the law, criminal. Look it up. And you're not going to let this guy offend them? Really? What are you going to do? What are you going to do, Vicente? I'd like to know. I'd like to know. Here's more.
How can you be president of any country if you don't guarantee security, if you don't find criminality? Of course, he has to go after whites, minorities, Afro-Americans, Mexicans, Muslims that violate the law. That has to be done. We understand that. But to speak about 3 million, to speak about 11 million that he doesn't know, even United States security agencies don't know who they are, don't know where they are. So this might be very dangerous to just start kicking out the first one that crosses in front of security agents. So he better be careful. That cannot be done.
Really? We thank you so much for your advice on our domestic policy coming from wherever you are in Mexico. We really appreciate that because we look to Mexico as an example of who we want to be, don't we, Vicente? On one hand, you say he's the president. Of course, he has to go after whites, minorities, African Americans, Muslims who violate the law. And then you say, but he can't go after the illegal Mexicans who violated the law because we don't know where they are, duh. And if we find when we find them, he better not, he better be careful. It's dangerous to start kicking them out when you find them. What are you talking about? You're not making any sense, Vicente. You're not making any sense whatsoever. Here's another one.
I think the American people, the ones who voted for him, he cheated them. He told them so many promises, like a real populist, that he will never be able to comply. I think we should register today the unemployment rate in the United States and compare it with next year's. I'm sure that the pretty good condition on employment that President Obama is leaving, he will not sustain.
Why don't you do that, Vicente? As a matter of fact, why don't you sit at home in Mexico and why don't you track the unemployment rate month by month? Why don't you make a chart? When you get the chart made or the graph made or however you want to do it, why don't you send it to us here in the United States? And we could look to you as our great informer, the great informer, Vicente Fox, telling us how our unemployment situation is, how our employment situation is, judging our country, because you come from such a wonderful country that, as I said, we just are dying to emulate. We want to be like you, which is why so many people break the law to come here, by the way, from you. One more.
Mexico has 43 trade agreements. We have become, through NAFTA, very competitive. Nobody can produce and manufacture right now better at a lower cost and higher quality than what we do in Mexico. I just came back from Dubai and from the Emirates visiting, and they are more than willing that we build a bridge, and we're going to do it here in Central Fox next March. How can we trade among ourselves without the United States? So many, many opportunities will rise. South America, Central America, Europe, we have a trade agreement with Europe. So yes, we've been accustomed to trading with the United States because it's been good for us. But if we don't have that, we will have where to trade.
I got two words for you, Vicente. Bye, bye. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. You don't need us. We don't need you. Senator Barbara Boxer says she wants to rid the country of the Electoral College. I wonder why. Bill Tucker has more.
If you don't live in a city, Barbara Boxer doesn't care much at all about your vote. The esteemed senator from California, who's retiring this year, has introduced a bill aimed at banning the Electoral College. Now, mind you, it's a symbolic gesture meant to placate the sore losers in the Democratic base. This map, tweeted by pollster Frank Luntz, shows half of our nation's population is found in cities, and cities typically vote Democrat. The blue here represents 50% of the population, in the gray, the other 50%. Without the Electoral College, a presidential candidate would only need to campaign in 5 of the biggest cities in the country, racking up votes from the same special interest blocks, ignoring vast swaths of the country. The Electoral College spreads voting power out across the whole country. Boxer's bill calls for an amendment to the Constitution that would need to be ratified by 3/4 of the states within 7 years of the bill's introduction and being passed. Calling this highly unlikely is an understatement. Meanwhile, liberals continue to march down the streets of big cities, shouting, "Not my president," while many of them didn't bother to vote anyway. What they really want is to take away your vote, while they throw theirs away. Bill Tucker, Newsmax, New York.